no drama. We are going to work together for the benefit of this county. And that does mean that we're going to strengthen some relationships, and we're going to come to the table with open minds, because I come from a background of, hey, we got a goal, we got a plan, and now we're going to work backwards to get where, to identify the steps, and they are going to play a key role in it. So we have to do that. And it's not just me saying it. It's this people in this community know it.
Well, welcome back to the Rutherford County GOP Podcast. I am Matt Herriman here with my co-host Ross Bradley, and today's episode is a really special one as we sit down with a Republican nominee, effectively the mayor-elect, Randy Allen. And so Randy has spent many years serving our community through business leadership, economic development efforts, public service, and now he's preparing to run one of the fastest growing and one of the largest counties in the state of Tennessee. So today we're going to cover everything from growth and infrastructure to public safety, schools, economic development, but what conservative leadership should look like at the local level over the next several years under Randy's leadership. So Randy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Does it seem surreal when people refer to you as mayor?
Yes, and I've been, corrected. I mean, it sounds different to me, but I've been corrected to say you are actually the Republican nominee at this point. But it's okay to say mayor-elect because there is no opposition in August. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I think as our Republican nominee, we will refer to you as that, but also as mayor-elect, because that's got a nice ring to it too.
Yeah, it does.
So before we dive into kind of policy and the future of Rutherford County, I want people to hear more about your story and how you got to this point. So, tell us a little bit about who Randy Allen is. What's kind of the shorter version of this is me?
Well, like I said, I've been telling people about on this campaign and previous campaigns a little bit about my history, my family history. I grew up here in Rutherford County. I have said multiple times, I stopped asking people here if they were born and raised here. I asked them if they were here before Nissan, because that's been the major thing that changed our entire county, our culture, our business models. I mean, everything really changed with Nissan. And for the good, and there's a lot of people that, don't feel it was for the good. But growing up here, fishing in the rivers, and, I was telling somebody earlier that, some of the places that I go today, especially when campaigning or, that used to be such a long way from my home. You really had to prepare yourself to be away from home. There was no cell phones, obviously, but you were going to be out in the middle of a river, up to your chest in water, fishing, swimming. Remember a lot of days, just going after school and heading out to Betty Ford Road or somewhere and just swimming, with my buddies. Growing up here, working here, most people know my family because my dad was the first manager of Walmart in this community. And so there's a lot of people here, especially in the last few months, that have come up to me and said, your dad gave me my first job. I love your family. I've known you since you were just a little kid, that type of thing. But you take that for granted, because
that was before they had to say which Walmart.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yes. And you take that kind of for granted because we were just such a small community. Mm-hmm. We still are a small community at our heart, but as you know, there's been a lot of growth. But I graduated from Oakland in 1982. I'm a graduate at MTSU. I met my wife actually in Hendersonville. One of our business locations was in Hendersonville, and I met her there. She came back to MTSU and became a graduate, and she's actually employed by MTSU now. But my mother is still right here. My sister is here as well. So we're still a very close family. My work career has spanned, retail to manufacturing. I spent a little time with the Department of Labor, the State Department of Labor, with Davidson County Metro Government. I was with United Way for a while, and then, currently the COO for Habitat. But, most people want to know, why did you choose to run for county mayor? And it is more simple than people understand. Growing up here, you look around, you see the changes. You are talking to people all day long at different things, and you're hearing the frustrations. I think I don't have any political in my background. My father wasn't in politics. My grandfather wasn't in politics. I am a true outsider, somebody that has had to work in government, with government, partnering with government, collaboration. But I remember in 2017 coming home and telling my wife, I think I've got to run for county mayor. And she said, no. I don't know where that's coming from, but the answer is no. And I was like, well, let me tell you, because I had spent 2017, really most of 2017, meeting with people and trying to convince them to run for mayor. And all of them said, and they're people they're people we know in this community that would have been great in this role. And at the end of those conversations, they said, no, why don't you do it? And I was shocked, but every one of them promised me their support. I will help you any way I can. And being very naive, you don't know what you need. So that's where it started, that, hey, I feel like I could do so much more for this county from a different position. And so that journey, which it is, you learn a little bit more. And I keep looking at Matt because I'm like, I know you know this, Matt. I know you know kind of how this works.
Yeah.
You've been around a few of those.
I mean, if you remember, I can remember back, which I know you do too, when Shane Reeves ran for Jim Tracy's seat.
Yeah.
And man, I followed that closer because I know Shane. I was probably more interested in it. And I really was, following that along, and was very glad, that he won that position. But having just observing from the outside, that's very encouraging. And I've heard people come up to me and say, man, I'm so encouraged by the fact that you were able to win, this. And I know that feeling, that's what started me out, So anyway, that's kind of how I got here and why I did it. And now I'm going to go and do it the best I can.
Walk us through election night. Because I think that's just super interesting, because the early voting results came out and you were not the leader at that point. Like, to walk us through that, like, what was election night like for you?
Because historically, and you would know this too at this point, usually you say, okay, well, whatever it comes out at early voting, it's most likely going to be how it shakes out in the end. And that's not what happened, obviously.
So we started on election day, just out. I am the current chair of the Rutherford County Wellness Council. We had a meeting that morning. And so I went to that meeting, and everybody was kind of surprised I was there because they were like, we thought you'd be out campaigning. I said, I am campaigning. I want y'all to get out and vote, But throughout that day, we just kept visiting poll locations, and not the big ones. We were visiting the smaller ones and just thanking volunteers of other candidates. And so throughout that day, and so it gets down to probably maybe around 4:00 or something. My wife is over at Central. And so I decided, hey, I'll just go over there and kind of end the day, the last few hours. And so that's kind of where I ended. And we left there after polls closed. I knew I had won Central. I waited for the tape to be put up. We had a little watch party over at my cousin's house. There's plenty of video out there to show what was going on. But I got there, and they had just dropped the early voting numbers. And it was, I was behind. And I said to everybody, I said, hey, it's never been done. Nobody's ever been able to overcome this deficit. And, they were still optimistic. And so the next drop came, and we were a little closer. And then the next drop came, and I was still like, hey, trying to manage expectations, and that I have a friend that is an accountant, and he is non-emotional. So, I've got all this emotion around me, but he's in the middle of it, and he's not. And he never is. He's a guy that is steady, unemotional. And he walks over to me when I think it was 26 of 30 or something on the screen, and he said, he showed me on his phone, he said, Randy, according to these current numbers, statistically, there's no way you can lose. And I said to him, David, are you sure? And he said, yes, I'm 100% sure. And when he said that, it was like a relief. And then that last drop came, and they were like, go get your phone. WGNS is fixing to call you. And I'm like, I don't even know where my phone is. And so I had to hunt it down. And sure enough, the radio station called me. And, so it was a real roller coaster. We had that very positive, optimistic feeling all day. And so I didn't know that statistic. I felt, from what I'd been paying attention to, I felt like I knew it. But I ran into somebody the next day who, without me saying that, came up to me and said, hey, did you realize that nobody's overcome that early voting deficit before? And I said, well, I thought that, but I didn't know. And he said, well, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And he is somebody that's politically savvy, knows that stuff. Yeah. And so for you to say that, I think it is something most people just don't realize. That
I know the feedback I've received, but what do you think made the difference on Election Day? Do you think it was going around to those polling locations?
I think that we were, from what I can tell, we were gaining momentum about a week out, and it just continued to build up until that day. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and people have said to me, I could feel it coming a week out, and I was like, I'm glad I didn't know that, because I might have, I'm joking when I say this, but it's actually, it's factual. I have been all gas and no brake for the last 2 months, and I will tell you something. This could not have been done without God playing a role. And I'll say that, I know I told you, Ross, this a week or so ago. I started this campaign off asking for prayer, and we continually did that. And Cindy reminded me, because, when you get in that campaign cycle, sometimes it's erratic. You're doing this because somebody told you this was a great idea, or you did this, and, or you don't do this because somebody said it's a bad idea. And Cindy kept reminding me, look, if God wants you in there, you're going to be in there. She felt that peace. There was a peace about it. From the very beginning, and y'all may remember, I announced late. I mean, a lot of people were like, I can't believe you announced so late, but there was a peace about it. We were praying about it. We were looking to God to give us, that sign of, hey, do this. And of course, people calling that would not call normally. People texting that were, like, oh my gosh, this person's never reached out to me before. And significant people. So you think about the role that God plays in everything we do. It's just that a lot of times we're not listening, or we don't hear, and so we wait or we react later. But I will say that, this is all to God's glory. There's nothing that I can take credit for. I told somebody the other day, guy that significant person, I feel like, in my campaign. And I talked to him the other day and I said, I really appreciate you being part of this. And he said, man, I feel like I didn't really do anything to help you. I didn't do enough, And I said, here's the thing I hadn't told him. I said, out of the blue, I get this idea in my head that I have to have him in my campaign. And so I call him, I hunt him down. It's not somebody I've got his phone number. I hunt him down, I find him, I say, hey, can you meet me for coffee on whatever day it was? And he said, sure. So I went in there, I sat down with him, I talked to him, I said, hey, this is my plan, this is what if you can support this, I need you on my campaign. And he was like, hey, I'm all in. I'm there for you, I asked, him to pray for me, and he did. And I said, but listen, the thing is, I didn't have that idea. I woke up one morning with this idea that only God could have put there. It was not, it's, things like that are amazing. Yeah. Things are like that are amazing. And so when he joined, I was like, you may have played a little role, but I don't think I could have won if you hadn't played the role you played in this. And he said he appreciated it, and he's still a good friend. But I'm just saying, that's the kind of thing that we overlook sometimes. Like, where did this idea come from? There's no reason I should have had it. Yeah. And he jumped right in and was all on board. So things like that, happen. So I do want to make sure that I continue to give God the glory, and I will continually seek his favor in everything I do. So
I know, here, talking to a lot of people, even going back to the debate, which we had over 90,000 people that watched that live. Amazing. That debate that we did, live. I think we had over 20,000 that watched it. And everybody said, man, he's just such a nice guy. And that's not to say that the other candidates were not nice guys, right, but there was just something different about you. And I think we saw voters in this election want to vote for good people and people that have less drama. Mm-hmm. And that's not disparaging to the other candidates. That's just the perception is that you had less drama and you were very likable. Mm. And I think that moved the needle for you in a big way.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I'm just being myself, and people kept reminding me, just be yourself. Just keep doing what you do. Be yourself. And so I think that was, and I will tell you, a lot of the things I was doing were things that I could directly communicate to the people of this county. I was making myself available. We always do that. I always do that type of thing. But it was amazing to me when I would go to, to an event, something that's going on, a community thing, and the people that would come up, and they weren't talking about the stuff that, most people would be talking about. They were talking about the things that impacted them in their day-to-day lives. And so I think that was being approachable and being available, I think really helped me as far as, hearing what they were saying and then using those things in my campaign, I think that made people, I think it was resonating with people, different messages. So
obviously we are one of the fastest growing counties in the state. And with that growth comes both challenges and opportunity. So what do you see? Let's talk more positively. What do you see more as opportunities that come with that type of growth?
So, Matt, I think, some of the things that we hear about growth, I mean, I'm glad you prefaced it the way you did, but a lot of people want to talk about the negatives, and I'm sure you've been in a room, I've been in several rooms where you can ask 200 people, how many of you actually are from here, grew up here, and, in a room of 200, you might have 20, maybe 10% of that room, and the others are from somewhere else. They came from California, they came from Michigan, I've talked to all the ones. Some of them came last week, some of them came 10 years ago, some of them. And so they all have different perspectives on what's going on here and why they left where they left and why this was attracted to them. After the, I think we discovered after the 2010 economic collapse, we realized how fragile the workforce here was. And so we started trying to, when I say we, I was working for the Department of Labor at that time in Metro Nashville government. We realized that, look, if we don't build a stronger, more diverse economic base, we can't all be tied. Everything cannot be tied to the car manufacturing industry. If we do that and Nissan decides to move, these tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers all decide they need to be in another place, we have nothing, at that point. And if you remember, looking back at that, there were no jobs. Nobody was hiring. Nissan was hiring, but they were hiring for a very specific positions, and nobody here had the training to do that. I remember we had a job fair, a Nissan job fair. They had a very few, like I said, positions open. They were very specific, but people were coming from Winchester and Kentucky and Chattanooga and trying to apply for those jobs. This was before Embassy had really taken off, and so we had it out there, and the entire place, the line wrapped around the entire interior, then it went outside and wrapped around the entire exterior, the news stations, everybody was here. People were ordering pizza in the lines. They were so long that they were waiting. And I was talking to some of those people back then, like, what are you going to do if you get this job? You live in Winchester, you live in Chattanooga, or, oh, well, we'll drive. There's nothing where I'm at. This is it. And I think that was a rude awakening for a lot of people here. And we started working more closely. We are very unique here in Rutherford County in that you just start naming off cities or counties where you've got a major university, you've got a major community college, you've got a major technology center, trade school. You've got this many high schools that have, I was at Oakland's graduation 2 nights ago. It's amazing how many kids graduated with an associate's degree when they came out of high school.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are hopefully preparing a workforce that employers want to see. And, working closely with the Chamber over the years, I know that when employers come here, it's not just that they're looking for cheap land or tax credits. They are looking to see, do you have the workforce that we can utilize locally? And so I think, in addition to being centrally located to every major interstate or, being close to Nashville, a lot of people see that, they don't want to live in Nashville, but they want to live close enough to Nashville. those are things that bring people to our area. Now, one of the things that happened just in the last year, losing Bridgestone, they just shut that plant down. I think it's got 52 acres under roof out there. I mean, it was 1,800 jobs, and Bridgestone was a good, solid employer. So we need to attract, and I realize they're tied to the car industry, but we need to attract, healthcare jobs and advanced manufacturing jobs, and as well as we need to help our automotive industry, out as much as we can. But I think that, when you look at that, the opportunities that we have, if we're at the table, have you ever heard this saying, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu? And if you think about it from that perspective, we have to be, as a county, we have to be focused on being at that table. Yeah. And I think people talk about, and I know I talked about it in the debate, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. There's reasons that convenience stores or fast food places want to be here. Makes sense. We got a lot of people passing through, all those things. We just got to work a little harder to get those higher wage, more skilled.
Matt and I sat down a few weeks ago with Weston Wamp, who is the mayor of Hamilton County, which is Chattanooga. We're just ahead of them in population. And I thought one of the things that was interesting is he sat back and he surveyed what their strengths were, and that's what he was growing from. And when I sit back and I look at Rutherford County, MTSU is a huge advantage for us that really none of the other surrounding counties have, except for Davidson County. And, we're getting ready to go through a leadership change. Dr. McPhee has mentioned that he's going to retire here pretty soon, and we're going to be looking at a new president. And I think it's interesting that you're coming on as mayor at this time, because it's a new season. You see what MTSU's had a really strong entrepreneur program over there for a while. They also have one of the most well-known quantum compute programs that has helped elevate the university to a new level. And with AI and technology, the quantum computing program could be really interesting from an economic development standpoint to be a leader in that space. I think the state as a whole is getting ready to lead in energy. With everything that's coming out of Oak Ridge. So it's such a dynamic time to come on as mayor. And so many exciting things. I know we're also positioned in such a way that, we have some really good sites for economic development. I know Middle Tennessee Electric, I'm on their board, and we have a great site right there off of 840 in Veterans that's over 100 acres that's primed for economic development. And I know there's some different groups that have been talking about that. So I think you're exactly right. I think we are really poised for the future of economic development growth, which for us, just like Nissan, it allowed families that didn't have opportunities or the income levels to be able to have a new level of quality of life that they haven't had before. And certainly that comes with challenges, roads and infrastructure and schools and all these different things. But man, I'd much rather be in a position of growth and prosperity and trying to manage infrastructure than to be some of these other cities that are diminishing. We have been able to pay for a lot of that stuff because of the growth, it seems like.
Well, and that's where I appreciate your perspective and just this conversation, because I'm a product of rural West Tennessee and grew up in a town of 5,000-6,000 people. And I mean, I people probably get tired of me saying this, but I mean, the people there would, crawl over themselves to deal with the things that we are dealing with here. If they heard some of the people griping about, this and that we deal with here, they'd be like, send them over here to West Tennessee. We'd love to have them, so that's why I think, talking about perspectives, looking at these challenges that we have in front of us as not problems, but opportunities to, really set the narrative. And again, you talking about really focusing on our strengths, not trying to reinvent the wheel. And that's what we got out of the conversation too with Weston is, it doesn't make sense to go spin a bunch of wheels on a bunch of things that, haven't even really started, but how can we really dig in and start to really excel and lead in certain areas of things that are already here.
I know housing, changing gears for a second, I know housing's been a big deal for you. You've ran Habitat for Humanity for several years. Obviously, that's a big infrastructure issue, is how do we maintain affordable housing? And I think that's a concern. The University of Tennessee did a study earlier this year that housing affordability was a major issue for businesses and families coming up. What's your thoughts about that, managing affordability and managing supply?
So I think, so there's a lot of different ways to look at that. We in this area have, according to several people, Edsel Charles is somebody that I pay attention to, and most people in real estate, and builders recognize that name. But in his perspective, we have just underbuilt for so long. And I'll just tell you, we are not thinking, I think in the last 2 years, I saw statistics that said for the first time in the history of this nation or something like that, it's cheaper to rent than it is to buy. Now, when you hear that and you think about long-term perspective, that's not something that you want to hang your hat on. Now, if you're living in the city and you want to be close to downtown and you need you're going to rent for a while, I understand, hey, that might be the great thing to have, but if you're going to raise a family, you're going to want to have a single family home, something that's affordable, what we used to call a starter home, right?
Which is interesting. I don't know if you've seen, the national average today for a first-time home buyer age is 39.
Seen that, yeah. So, and it really came to, you hear great stories with Habitat, but a lady that had been in the program and said, I'm 53 years old and I'm the first person in my family to ever own a home. You're just like, oh my gosh, but there's a lot of challenges outside of just inventory. Inventory might be low. The appraised values might be too high. We're seeing a lot of people that are moving. A lot of my friends, people I grew up with, they have moved to Bedford County, or they've moved to Coffee County, or they still work here, but they've gone to where it's less expensive to live. And so in our area, it appears that we have made it very difficult for the guy that we grew up with that was building, say, 10 houses a year. The guy that you're going to church with, your kids are going to school with, the guy that, but we've made it pretty easy for somebody that can build anywhere in the nation and to come here and to build, a big subdivision or something like that. So when you start going down that road of long-term planning, you've got to identify and one good example of long-term, thinking about this. You go out Hallsell Pike. How far out Hallsell Pike do you go? And there's a sidewalk running right along the road. There's no houses there. A lot of that is open land, but there's a sidewalk running down the side of Hallsell Pike. So you would think, well, somebody had planned that would be a development area, but a lot of that has centralized itself over closer to I-24 or, in an area where there's more grocery stores, more retail, more convenience things, movie theaters, things like that. So I think, as far as trying to get back to an affordability, make it where kids can live here, well, we've got to be training them for jobs that pay enough for them to afford to live here. And we've got to get our inventory right. And so a lot of people said, hey, traffic is terrible. Traffic is terrible. And we're building too much. Well, maybe we're not building the right thing. Maybe we need to focus more on what is the right thing for the families that live here. If we're a college town, then yes, we're going to need more rental around, say, MTSU or near the downtown area, but maybe we need to be focused more on home ownership out in the areas that are more rural, and I know, Matt, you deal with this all the time. There are people in California that are looking at a map today, and they're saying, I want to live here. It's close to Nashville, so I'm going to call somebody. I've heard people do it. People have told me, this is how I decided to come to Murfreesboro, or this is how I decided to come to Rutherford County. We were in California, we were looking around, we're country music fans, or my family lives in this area, so I'm going to want to go there. So, bam, they get off the plane, they come and look around, and they say, you know what? I really like what I'm seeing down here in Rutherford County. The schools are great. My family's here. There's jobs here. It's a good retirement community, whatever. And then they move here. That's the rhyme or reason that people don't understand about what we're competing with. We're caught up in regional growth. The traffic that's coming through our town, a lot of it didn't start here. It started in a county, and they're moving, passing through to another county.
It's funny you say that, because Matt and I just sat down last week with Sean Farash, and he moved here from New York. His wife was from California, and they moved to Nashville, and that was the first place they stopped when they moved to Tennessee. And then they immediately ended up moving to Rutherford County, and that's where they're at today. And it was really just evaluating quality of life, and it's hard to beat Rutherford County in a lot of ways. And so what I hear you say is, maybe we need to look at planning in a smart way.
Yeah.
Let's evaluate our infrastructure. Where can our infrastructure support maybe more density in certain areas that make it more affordable? And where can we promote homeownership in different areas? And, I think the thing that's interesting about that is there's always this debate about preserving farmland. And that's the smart way to do it, is to really evaluate your infrastructure and put the housing where it needs to be. And let's preserve the green space so that we can all enjoy it. So
that's right.
I appreciate that perspective.
I talked to a lady on the campaign that out, campaigning. And she said, she lives out on the far edge of Rutherford County. Never thought growth would reach her. She has a historic farm. It's one of those things where it just wouldn't make sense normally. No city water, you're on a septic system, all of those things. And somehow or another, they've decided the farm behind her sold, and now they're going to develop it into 400 or 500 houses. Like I was telling you earlier about the distance, it used to be so far away. It used to be so cost prohibitive to put in a step system in a rock. The rock, but, people builders now can't afford to do those things. Engineering's different. We've got a lot of, there is a lot of opportunity here. So
let's talk a little bit about, how important coordination between county, cities, and state leaders, and even kind of private sector business leaders, but really kind of more on the elected official side. How important is that coordination?
It is so important. I can't tell you how important I have put that as a priority. And here's the reason. Because everybody I talk to out on the campaign trail, they might come in with, what are you going to do about the landfill? I'm no on expansion. Okay, the county and the city need to be working closer together on this. What are you going to do about traffic? Oh, it's bad. I think we got to do some long-term planning, work closer with TDOT. I agree, that's a good idea. The city and the county don't seem like they're working together. I'm not seeing the state officials, the state delegation. I don't see them working closely. You've got to do something about that. That underlies everything that everybody came to me with. It was that underlying, I said it, the way I said it was, hey, no drama. we are going to work together for the benefit of this county. And that does mean that we're going to strengthen some relationships, and we're going to come to the table with open minds. My administration is going to, because I come from a background of, hey, we got a goal, we got a plan, and now we're going to work backwards to get where, to identify the steps, and they are going to play a key role in it. So we have to do that. And it's not just me saying it. It's this people in this community know it. They are aware of it, and it impacts their day-to-day life. Even if they don't recognize it initially, they eventually come to that conclusion. And that's what I was hearing, was people saying to me, you've got to work closer. I like your personality. I think you'll work well with the city mayors and that is what we expect. I mean, when we elect somebody, we expect them to go in with my agenda, your agenda, and to get things done. And I think it is a high priority for me to make sure that we are all working and moving in the same direction. And I realize, hey, that's maybe some people are listening to this and saying, that's pie in the sky, it'll never happen. Well, we're going to work every day to make it happen.
Well, I noticed last week, right after the election, you were at the mayor's prayer breakfast that next morning with all the other mayors, and just spending time with them, being with them.
Yeah.
To me, that comes down to communication.
It does.
And I think the party, because we're a super majority Republican party, I think the party has some responsibility in that too. And we want to help facilitate some of those discussions. So I know we're doing some things to help bring everybody to the table, and let's make sure we're all create opportunities for you guys to do that. So I'm glad that that's your focus, because I think that's super important.
And let me just add to that, because a lot of people don't realize, but before I ever got elected, I had every one of them right here. And we stay in touch about, not necessarily the big things, but about the little things. And we have talked and met. I had, I don't know how many years we've gone to Mother's Day lunch or an Easter lunch in some cases up in Smyrna. Mary Esther and her family are there, and we enjoy seeing them and visiting with them. And I'm excited about all of them, and the opportunities that maybe doors that we can open for each other. So.
Well, we've covered a lot of different topics. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
What is it that we haven't talked about that you want to share? Is there anything that we haven't mentioned that you want to kind of share?
Well, let me think about that for a minute. I will tell you some of the things that I think are important as we move forward. We're not doing enough to educate the voter. It's not, and I'm not talking about mailers or videos or things like that. I think that what's interesting to me, because we talked earlier about statistics and stuff, how many disengaged voters are in this county? People that, you look at voter records and you see, man, these people are voting every time they align directly with our voting records. But they're not knowledgeable about how government works. They don't know, for example, they don't know the difference between a city mayor and a county mayor. I didn't realize we had a county mayor, that kind of stuff. I think we're not doing enough to educate the average voter. I think that there is a big area that we miss out on because people just don't think we're interested in, and that's around environment, that's around, water quality. That's, it's kind of a niche that the other party has kind of dominated. But there are so many young conservatives that are coming up that have those same concerns, and they really need to be educated about why conservative values are important just in general, You look at, when I was going out and doing those videos on the day of and the election day, and I was saying, there's 200,000 people that still hadn't voted, and that was a rough estimate, but you knew after the early voting numbers were done, we knew those numbers. We didn't know how it was going to turn out, but you could tell that there's over 200,000 registered voters in a county of about 380,000 that are not going to come out and engage in this process. Some of it is frustration. I hear people say, my guy never wins, or I don't agree with some national issue. And we need to do a better job of educating people about what's going on locally. And I really believe, that we're making strides in this. I think, Daniel's leadership, and I have told him this, so I'm not saying anything new. I think it's been impactful on our community and on our party. But I will say, I don't think, no matter how good we do, I don't think we'll ever be perfect. But I think there's a lot of room in there between what we're doing now and getting to perfect. So I do think that's important. And really, that's,
That's good information. That's where I think we as a party, and I think you're exactly right, Daniel has done a phenomenal job. When Matt and I pitched the idea of doing a podcast to Daniel, he said, it's a great idea. It's just another platform that we can get out and reach people that maybe aren't currently aware of what's going on.
That's right.
And, he's focused a lot on social media. And we've seen the donations that have come back to the party grow quite a bit through that. And, we just recently set up a PAC. And so we're going to help some of these campaigns, because one of the things I hear is, we want to make sure that we have great candidates that represent the people and that have great ideas. I think one of the things about the state of Tennessee that has made us so great is because we have elected business leaders that have been successful in their personal lives to come out and then give it back to the community through service and through office, to their elected office. And so, we hope to do more of that. The folks that you set and talked to and said you should run for mayor, we need more of those folks to run for mayor and to run for school board and run for commission and council and all these state, all these different positions. It's so important. And I think the more that we get that, the more engaged that people will be long term, and the more that they feel good about the process.
Yeah. So Randy, where can people keep up with you?
So my website, which is randyallenmayor.com, we will be continuously updating that. Obviously, we're going to be working toward the August 6th general election. No opposition, but we're going to be putting out signs and putting out content. My Facebook page has got a lot of information on it, a lot of videos and things like that. Randy Allen for Rutherford TN. I think that's the best way to kind of find out what's up and what's going on with me and our campaign, which we will be campaigning. I never felt like I got off the campaign trail, really. I'm very fortunate to be here with y'all, but I'm just saying it feels like,
You're still going.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
no break.
You said this beforehand, and I'll kind of wrap up with this. You said we were talking about what your platform and what are you going to do different. And I know change is sometimes, tricky because the unknown. But one of the things you said is you certainly have some ideas that you want to do once you become mayor. But you said, I never want to stop listening to people.
That's right.
And I think that what I hear you say is you've not stopped campaigning, meaning you haven't stopped going out there and listening to what people think the problems are and what you can do to make things better. And I think that's the important thing in our community. If we want to continue to move our community forward, that's the mentality I think we have to have, is to continue to evaluate, and then it's your responsibility to make the decision with the information that you're able to collect. So right. Thank you for that leadership. I wish you the best of luck. I know I've heard so many people are super excited that you're our guy now, and the county I think is going to be a better place because of your willingness to serve. So I hope you've enjoyed this podcast today. Make sure you check out Randy's social media. See him when he's out. He's out in the community all the time now. I know he would love to hear from you, and we would love to hear from you too. So if you have comments or questions, send them to us. We'll pass them along to him, and we want to make sure your voice is heard. If you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe. Thanks for joining us today.